grinding to a halt. This week, talking to Josh Robbins. I've known Josh for 2 or 3 years. We originally met on Twitter through a mutual friend, and I have guested on one of his podcasts quite a few times. And this was the first time we've really dug into career, work, really any of these topics, other than David Lynch. We do talk about David Lynch a little bit. Outside of David Lynch, we talk primarily about change and about starting over. Josh is kind of at an inflection point in his career. The company he was with most recently had a round of layoffs, the company shut down, and now he is looking to start over. He's looking for his next move. And so we have a conversation about what it's like to start to build a career, start moving down a path, and then have everything just kind of stop. And then you have to decide what's next. So we talk about that. We talk about music. We talk about his creative process. We talk about movies a little bit. Yeah, it's just a great conversation. I really enjoy talking to Josh. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Here's my conversation with Josh. We'll just talk and then fade in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what we do on Jorts. That's what I sort of try and do in spinning out. And sometimes
Yeah.
I kind of like edit like a hello into what their random stuff they were saying or yeah. But other times I just kind of like do like a pre-roll and then just to kind of get the person comfortable. And then I don't know why I'm telling you how to podcast. You have multiple episodes. It's not really much of anything. You just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I like that about it, but that's also like the scariest part is that I can't, there's not like a right way. It is
Yeah.
very much
Yeah.
just to figure it out. And either it works or it doesn't. And I'm
I
not
think it's
happy with any of it yet, but that's because I feel like I'm still really trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think what's funny is I remember before starting, I was talking to someone that like worked for like an NPR affiliate, and they were like, "Well, you want to make sure no episodes over 30 minutes."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "But that's not what any of the podcasts I listen to are. That's not the
Exactly.
ones I enjoy."
Yeah.
So I just kind of did what I do with any sort of creative endeavor. It's like sort of try and create the thing you enjoy. And
Yeah.
it hasn't actually served me well to not just listen to the person. Maybe they're right. I assume they're probably right that like if you want to maximize the amount of people that listen to you,
Mm-hmm.
probably don't have like an hour and a half episode like every week.
Yeah.
Is what I think that person was right. It's just like I've never known how to do anything correct my whole life. So why start now at this, advanced part of my 30s? So,
I think that brings up a good question though, is because I'm the same. Like I love shows like Blank Check, where it's like,
mhm.
oh, we're gonna talk about RoboCop for 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I will. If you talk about RoboCop for 7 hours, I will listen
Yeah.
to all
Even
7 hours of it.
if it takes me like a week to get through it, like I don't
Yeah,
need something because I think the person's reasoning was like they need to be able to finish it in a car ride home.
yeah,
And then it's like, no, I'm fine if it's multiple car rides. And then
yeah.
there are times where I go back to a podcast, like, will I understand what they're talking about? And then it's right away, and then you're brought back, and then it's kind of
Hmm.
like you're like, it's like having an ongoing conversation with a friend. It's
Yeah.
like,
But I think the question is, they may be right, like you said. They
yeah,
probably have better intel and
yeah,
data than we do. But just because it's right in the way that could make your show more successful, is that the show you would want to do? Because I could do like a 15-minute version of this show
hmm,
where it's just like, yeah, I could have successful people on and just kind of like suck their dick for 15 minutes. I
yeah,
have no
yeah,
interest in that. That is not what I'm trying to do at all. And the best feedback I've gotten have been people who are like, oh, well, it seems so natural. Like it feels agendaless. Like you
hmm,
just go in and you have a conversation and it has natural ebbs and flows and then it naturally ends. And it's like, yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly what I want. I want a natural feeling conversation, not, all right, I got to make sure we talk about these 5 points and then you got to plug your thing and then everybody's happy. That doesn't That does not interest me.
But wouldn't it be nice to like have something? I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking about you and your lovely family and your job that seems to make you a lot of money and you're very happy about all of those things. But what I'm saying is like I feel like I would like to feel successful at like one aspect of my life,
Hmm.
but but I feel like it's like I have to go into everything being me
Yeah.
so much that it's going to make it awkward somewhere because sometimes you don't need that much of me in there.
No, I feel that. And yeah, my job is good. My job is unfulfilling in every possible way I can imagine, which is what most people feel. So for me, I like this because this is like, and it's still performative. Absolutely. This is, I'm still trying to put on a
Mhm.
show, but it's the closest version of me that I feel like I can put out without saying wild shit that would make me become unemployable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah.
so I like this, and if I could choose one of the two to be the thing that pays my bills, it would absolutely be this. This is
Oh,
like
for sure, for sure.
a creative endeavor I enjoy. Doesn't mean it's not a pain in the ass,
Yeah,
and that there's times that I don't want to do it, and I definitely don't want to edit any of it. I don't want to make TikToks, but that's part of it if I want to grow it. But yeah, if I had to choose between the two, this is the one I would absolutely prefer to do. Um, so I think I'm also limiting myself by not following set formats.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's just it's kind of like too. I mean, to bring it into like a deeper conversation. I feel like every conversation I have is like, how can I bring it down? How can I
Mhm.
bring, like kind of bum someone out, listen to it? But it's like how do I, yeah, like how do I get a little closer to like who I am?
Mhm.
Yeah, and in a way, I feel like I'm about to just like repeat myself from earlier. It's just like who is the genuine me?
Mhm.
But this is where it holds me back. And here's an example that popped in my head. I feel like there's a thing on Twitter or really any sort of social media platform where it is behoove you to sort of recycle the joke.
Of
You
course.
will, that's like how you can get success. So it's
Yeah.
like, so then in the way of like, I guess podcasting, it's like pick a format that seems to work for other people.
Yeah.
And the sidebar there, before I bring it back to Twitter, I guess, is like, I'm not really sure if we've picked the right examples. Like it's like when I think of like when people are like, what bands are your band's influence?
Mhm.
I tell them bands that weren't really that successful. So
Yeah.
what hope do I have if they had like a moment in the sun, if like my reference is like, the band Sugar from like the early 90s. And
Mhm.
it's like any sort of band that didn't really get exactly probably what they were wanting at the time, or like the
Yeah.
Replacements or something like that. But to the thing of like the Twitter example, I feel like when I see that happening, I want to go my own way, or
Yeah.
I don't want to be involved at all.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like if I just were to, like put a little like, I don't even know if it's ego aside,
Mhm.
I would I would be able to do something successful if I could allow myself to mimic other people. And that's not to say that I'm like, oh, I have to do the original thing,
Yeah.
because nothing's original. But it's sort of like when I see like a bunch of people doing it, I just go, it's either like I don't want to do the same thing, but
Mhm.
most of the time it's I don't it's already been done. Why am I going to kind of do that again? But that's how it feels with like a lot of things.
Yeah. So two follow-ups to that. What is going to be creative and one's going to be professional. So in the creative sense, do you think that that is just like the desire to create something that feels pure and real to you? Like, yeah, you could go write.
Annoyingly so. Annoyingly so.
Yeah,
Yes.
so like you could go write a pop song. There's
Yeah.
a set formula. Everybody knows what that formula is. The same way with like worship music is a good example
Yeah.
of like the guys in the band Emery. They had a podcast for a while, and they would joke and like improv a worship song, and it'd be like, well, you need an adjective, you need an element, you need a key change, and like just on the spot, make up a worship song. They're like, because it's the same as a pop music formula,
Yeah.
like the
It's hard.
absolute
It's
same.
harder. I mean, I know you had a couple points to put in there,
Mhm.
but for that thing, it's actually harder. And sometimes it's not, when I have that impulse, it's not even technically originality. Like, I don't
Mhm.
feel like I have to create this new
Yeah.
genre that no one's ever heard. Sometimes it is like working within the confines of something I guess I deem as an original thought. It
Yeah.
probably would still be like even the desire to create your own, like I was gonna say church song, whatever
Mhm.
church song.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard because it's kind of the same thing. It's like everything feels like it's been done. So then
Mhm.
you're like, so then it's kind of hard if you just don't like turn your brain off and let it be. Like, and
Yeah.
that's sometimes even with songwriting. It's like I'm like I've already done this, played these chords in this order,
Mhm.
and then but it's like something's got to come to you. And I guess like to someone that's actually writing Christian music genuinely, they believe in God, then it's sort of like they would be like the spirit moved through me. But
Yeah.
then it might just be a new rendition on how they're saying the words hallelujah.
Yeah.
But to them they're like, wow, but sometimes when you create something original,
Mhm.
or you feel like you do, I'm not saying like I'm like I sewed my own pants today. No one else
No.
sewed pants like me, but like it's like but sometimes you're like, oh, I know it basically, but I did this myself. I arrived at the same conclusion you did,
Yeah.
but originally, but not to derail you off your other points you had.
No, no, the other point was just going to be like professionally, it also is beneficial to copy what you're seeing. So being in marketing, I know there's a very
Yeah.
specific like type of digital marketing guy. And a few years ago, as I started like just watching what people were posting on LinkedIn and seeing how they were
Hmm.
interacting, I was like, oh, I can just pick up pieces of this because
Yeah.
this is what people are going to look for in an interview. So, like, if I start to say these words, I know I can get a job. And I did. They turned out to be jobs I mostly didn't want because I was getting them based on a fake version of who I was.
Yeah.
Whereas now my approach is very much in an interview. Like I would probably do an interview in this Bruce Lee t-shirt. I would not dress up. I will cuss in my interviews. I will say whatever I want to say because for me, it's more about getting a position because you like me.
Hmm.
The skill set is irrelevant. I've done it long
Yeah.
enough that I wouldn't have gotten this far if I couldn't do the job. So I want to make sure that they like who I am and the personality I bring.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and it took a while to get to a realization of like, oh, I can do that. I could just sell like me. I could be the product.
I think where I'm at right now, normally if I still had a job right now,
Mhm.
I would have 100% agreed with you,
Yeah,
because I would have
it's
been
a
like, I'm
position of
killing it.
privilege. I'm
I'm
aware of
killing
that.
it because I am so much me. And I feel like
Mhm.
the more I showed me and the more I told them about the things that I knew,
Mhm.
the more it sort of applied, or they were like, oh wow, he like really knows this very specific thing that he
Yeah.
spent his life doing, like, uh, but I, as not having a job, I'm
Mhm.
very I'm very like I'm not sure about that,
Yeah.
because it's sort of like it hasn't served the job search well to be
Mhm.
impeccably me, to the
Yeah.
point that I almost refuse to do cover letters. And I almost like, because I'm like, if you want to get to know me,
Yeah.
like, talk to me, because I don't feel that I can really express myself well on a paper, especially on a piece of paper that, honestly might be AI generated, because we got to put the buzzwords in.
Yeah.
It's like, it's, yeah, and that's like a whole different thing, but it's like I don't feel that I'm going to be able to sell someone on me with
Mhm.
just essentially like a picture of me. I wouldn't
Yeah.
buy me off of an image of me, you know. So I feel like that's like what the my resume screams. And
Mhm.
and I've looked at it, I've looked at it again, I've taken edits, I've moved it into a PDF from it being, a Word document, just to
Yeah.
snazz things up a little bit more. All of those little things.
Yeah.
And but I also think that what's funny about that is I guess we're saying we're both thinking that we can get it if we just are able to show us.
Yeah, if we can get in front of the person, we're
But are
confident.
we getting in front of the people? Because I would assume most people looking at a resume are just putting it to an AI
Yeah,
generator,
to look for
and
keywords.
then whoever comes up first, out of those five people out of the 105,
Yeah.
then those five people, they probably will get a chance to say who they truly are. And that's
Hmm.
where I feel like I'm closer to winning, but you're not even allowed to go to that next step
Yeah.
to show who you are because you didn't put, I don't know, whatever word,
Yeah.
in there that would have allowed you to do that. So I guess back to the original point, somehow it's kind of like, is keeping it real like helping? Yeah, I don't know if it's really helping me
Hmm.
in this case, like not
Yeah.
to make this like a woe is me kind of thing. I think just realistically, I feel like that's the position.
Yeah.
My algorithm on TikTok is now telling me different ways to get a job, and you know, and so it
Part of
becomes
that
very
might be
difficult.
interacting with me on TikTok, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been helpful. I think like, also seeing, I listened to I had his name and the guy who was in Squirt. I listened
Oh
to his
yeah,
interview
Jordan.
yesterday. Yeah. I didn't want to be like the guy from Squirt.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Squirt was. But I feel like I want to find Squirt on streaming. I don't know if
Hmm.
their music is up in that fashion.
I think it was on Amazon Music was where I
Uh,
found it.
they
And
need to put it on
Jordan, if you're
Spotify.
listening, just DM me so we can make sure Josh and I have copies.
I can get it on Spotify. Um, but but yeah, just those conversations about work and everything. Those conversations have been helping me,
Hmm.
and kind of seeing them through a lens of not exactly like, I feel like every LinkedIn picture, it feels like it's like somebody AI generated like their smile,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and I feel like there's lots of people I've seen on there that are doing an extension of themselves, but I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, I understand this, but
Yeah.
it's also like, I'm like, this is the platform for it.
Hmm.
Why am I so resistant to just putting that version of myself up there? Because it would actually serve me well. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's funny. I mean, I feel like that's something that maybe you've been able to crack through,
Hmm.
and that this will help me and my family if I'm able to exude this part of myself.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm like, no, I have to smoke this. I have to smoke a cigarette and like hang out in the alleyway and not be a conformist kind of thing. Um,
No, I very much feel that last statement. One of the initial taglines I was thinking about for this show was the anti-capitalist business podcast,
mhm.
because like that's where I actually stand. I am very anti-capitalism. I hint at those things on LinkedIn every now and then. I'm very
Yeah,
open about how I feel about the way that platform works and how there's so much positioning. I mean, it is just like business dude Instagram is all that
yeah.
LinkedIn is. So I want to be the opposite of that, and you gain some traction, but you also get a lot of people that will DM you and be like, "Hey, you're just an entitled millennial." I'm like,
People message you that on
I
LinkedIn.
have, yeah.
I feel like I'm like, I yeah, no one has ever told me their true opinion of
Mhm.
anything on LinkedIn. Like, I don't. I mean, I feel like I have two posts that I've ever made.
Yeah.
But I guess you post a lot.
Yeah,
So
like 3 to 4 times a week is my
yeah,
norm. So like I have like a content planning schedule where like I will think of a topic. Having a
yeah,
show to promote helps with that a lot because I know 1 to 2 times a week I can just talk about this shit,
yeah, yeah.
and that gives me some content. But you stay in the algorithm really easily because not a lot of people post.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's a channel that's really easy to gain traction on, but it's the one that feels the dirtiest to me to gain traction on.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, sometimes I've been there a lot lately.
Yeah.
Most of my time is spent there. And like it's hard with LinkedIn. It's like I don't feel like there's like a lot of traction I've gotten in terms of like
Hmm.
job search. It is easier to apply for jobs there. The thing that keeps me there is the jobs that I'm applying for do feel more real than like even Dynamite or like Indeed.
Yeah.
Like I think I said it on Twitter. It's like LinkedIn feels like the job you want, but you'll never get.
Yeah.
Like Dynamite feels like a job that doesn't exist, but you're like, I don't, it's like in a different country and like I don't really understand what this role is. Like too good to be true sometimes. Then Indeed is like the job you probably will get, but you
Hmm.
definitely don't want. Like in
Yeah.
any fashion, any fashion of, I mean, I don't technically want any job, but I know that I'd like to make money because
Yeah.
I don't want to starve and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. So I'm like, LinkedIn feels like a necessity.
Hmm.
So you're smarter to have embraced this. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like I don't feel better having made a decision that sort of like puts me at odds with these things. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm actively like hurting my family being my wife and my dog. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, it's not cool at my age to be
Hmm.
this oppositional. That's the word I meant to
Yeah.
use. But what's funny is like I don't this wasn't even the topic we were going to talk about today. Yeah.
It's not, but it kind of also is. It can segue easily into change. And I assume this came from that TikTok that I posted.
Oh yeah. That
Yeah.
really and also what was interesting with that is like I feel like there's so much of my algorithm that was like do this and you'll get a job or this is
Yeah.
what I'm looking for a headhunter. It's like it wasn't a lot of them aren't in sort of the headspace
Hmm.
of the person kind of looking for a job. And I feel like
Yeah.
yours was more that.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that because I mean there is to a degree because people are like I applied for 1,000 jobs and I can't find anything. And usually
Yeah.
that stitch with the recruiter. And then they're like, well, you just got to do this one thing.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, but yours kind of like offered some insight into like how I'm feeling because
Hmm.
it is true. It's like, it feels like the last job I had was I had it for essentially 3 years.
Hmm.
And it feels like almost and I've worked at places longer, but it's like it feels like every 3 years you're like a new butterfly or something.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like I have to like shift who I am, and the idea of like you get told essentially when you're a kid, it's like you start working somewhere at 20 and then you spend 30 years there,
Yeah.
which is funny because I'm like, were people just retiring at 50? Like what was going on in like let's say the 1960s?
Yeah.
Like if the idea was pre-college, like I don't know, let's say I don't know, even well, you get out of college at like 22 or something,
Hmm.
22 to 24. So even still, spend 30 years on a job, you're 54 years old.
Yeah.
And I guess they were probably also just dying at 60. So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
difference.
Living hard.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and just to recap, for the 12 people listening who haven't seen the TikTok,
Hmm.
um, not saying a lot of people listen, I'm saying 12 people listen and they haven't seen the TikTok.
No.
Uh, I had come across a video where somebody had just said she wishes that people in their 30s would talk about like starting over their career or like feeling like you're just getting started.
Mhm.
So then I did a stitch with that, just saying, hey, everybody's constantly starting over, everybody's constantly reinventing themselves. Um, and I have a good story for this actually that I think paints it in a really good way. When I was 16, 17, I was doing landscaping and I was cutting grass at a daycare.
Yeah.
Uh, and then 5 years later, I was pulling orders in a warehouse that was delivering to that daycare. And then I got promoted and I was the person taking the orders for that daycare. And then I switched to marketing and I ended up doing the marketing for that daycare. So like there's this long period of my career that there were multiple changes, but everything centered around this daycare that was like 2.5 miles from my house. So like there were constants in it, but everything about my career over the last 15 years has changed drastically. The amount of jobs I've had, similar to what
Yeah.
you're saying, Josh, like I don't trust anyone who stays at a job for 30 years. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Um, because even a great company that cares about you, if it makes sense to let you go, they will let you go in a heartbeat. Like, there is no loyalty to an employee. So I won't have loyalty to a company up until the point of like, hey, you sign my paychecks. That's great. I'm happy with that. I have health insurance. That's great. But if a better opportunity comes along, or if I decide I want to pursue something different, I feel no loyalty to a specific company, um, because they don't actually have loyalty to me, and it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense for them to have loyalty to me. I enjoy
Yeah.
what I do right now to an extent, but if somebody, if iHeart reached out and was like, "Hey, we can pay you half your salary to just do podcasts," I would find a way to make up that other half of the salary so I could do podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what ends up happening kind of even to the point of like there was a point in 2018 I had worked in finance for like 6 years, but
Mhm.
it was with the same company, but it was like through different roles. So I always kind of felt like I was like starting over. And also I was a
Yeah,
contractor. So a contract would end, then I'd have that feeling of I'm unemployed. And
yeah,
then essentially 2 weeks later, they'd be like, hey, do you want to come back? And this happened like two or three times while I was there. And then at some point through that process of being a contractor, I was training new hires that had like their licenses.
yeah.
And then eventually I got hired on to Vanguard. And then I failed my finance test like twice. And then I got let go by Vanguard. But
Yeah.
then I got rehired by the contract company. And so
Oh
I was
my
working at
gosh.
Vanguard again. So overall, I worked at Vanguard for like 6 years. But
Yeah,
near the end of that point, I was training people about like beneficiaries on IRA accounts, like how to set
yeah,
them up, what the kind of legality of all that stuff was. And then it's like no one really realized that I wasn't like a licensed employee because they had just seen me in so many different roles.
yeah,
Like it was just like, I don't know, you just feel like you're a manager. But outside of that, it's like, one, it still felt that I was like changing who I was almost like every year. Like, so it
yeah.
still had that feeling. But after 28, I quit Vanguard. Or really, actually, I should say I got let go because I booked a 3 week long tour
Mhm.
and they gave me the time off. But then right as I left for tour, they were like, you can't take 3 weeks off. Like the computer said I could. And then and then they were like, well, you're gonna get fired if you go. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, what? At what point will I be fired? And they're like, well, essentially, so like the Monday of the third week,
Mhm.
they were like, and then I was in Chicago and it was like, well, you're let go. And I was like, okay. You know, and then from there I just like worked odd jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
But my point being, I feel like it's like I am I become so loyal. Like even if a
Mhm.
company doesn't obviously give a shit about me, like I was a
Yeah.
contractor, there was no reason that I needed to like stay that long.
Yeah.
And I just go, no, this is like, I'm like helping this. Like, I get this little thing in my brain because I feel
Yeah.
like it's like I was raised to be loyal in that way.
Yeah.
And to the point that it's like hurting me. And it was like during the pandemic, I had all these events jobs before the pandemic. I had all these events jobs that sort of
Mhm.
allowed for me to go on tour. So I could like
Yeah.
be a sound guy for a few hours and do these like set up for weddings. And I essentially had like three or four jobs so
Yeah.
that whenever I go on tour, I could, leave. And since they all didn't need me like a ton,
Yeah.
but then that essentially all ended except for one of those side jobs during the pandemic. And that was like working in a kitchen.
Mhm.
And then during the like almost the whole length of the pandemic, I stayed at that place because I was like, they need me in
Yeah.
this role. I am the best dishwasher they have. Like, and and that's like how bad it can get with me. It's sort of
Mhm.
like if I feel like I'm needed, I will stay at a place too long.
Yeah.
And, and it's like and I think with like seeing you. I don't obviously don't disagree with it.
Mhm.
And I definitely gave too much TMI in that example. Like I'm like broadcasting my L's like too hard. But it's just to show like how loyal I
Yeah.
will be, and there's no reason for me to do that. So I actually
Hmm.
think I'm like learning from seeing like from you, and my wife has really like changed a lot of the way I look at things because she's done a version of kind of what you done where it's sort of like I don't want to go. She was like, I don't want to go into this field unless
Hmm.
they pay me X.
Yeah.
And then they paid her X. And then she was like, wow, I didn't think that would work. And then, and then she had recruiters being like, and then she was like, well, I don't really want to move somewhere unless they pay me X.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of kept doing it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, I got to stay at my little comic book job or something,
Yeah.
social media role and website stuff that I was doing before. And it's to whose benefit, I guess
Hmm.
is the of that long spiel. It's interesting to kind of see it um because I think I looked at sort of my disdain of capitalism different than you or my wife were doing because it's
Hmm.
kind of like if nothing matters and capitalism is bullshit, then obviously I shouldn't be loyal
Yeah.
and I should just kind of do there's a better way to say this, but almost like do what's going to be best for me
Hmm.
because there's not like some pot of gold at the end where, someone's going to give
Yeah.
you the big capitalism badge or something. Like if everyone sort of che- getting a regular job isn't cheating the system, so I don't want to
Hmm.
say that, but it's like it's almost like if everyone's kind of like the wealth gap is getting bigger and bigger. It's
Yeah.
like I don't need to be the one who suffers if I can help it.
Yeah.
Right now I can't help it. So yeah,
The way I think about it is I'm stuck in the system, so I have to find a way to survive within it. It is a system that I
exactly. Yeah,
absolutely think should be destroyed because it's harmful. My brain is also perfectly wired to be really good at it. And so that's something I have to keep myself in check about is because I'm so good at masking and like code switching and like matching the energy of anyone I'm in the room with
hmm,
that I could absolutely be like a life coach douchebag. Like I know that that is within me that I could turn that on.
yeah,
And so I have to be aware of that because that is something I am morally opposed to, but I also know I could probably make a lot of money. So there's like this line I have to walk of how far do I lean into this to build the life I want to live, but also not feel like I'm losing who I actually am within it.
yeah,
And I think that helps me, and not to say I'm not loyal to my company because people I work with listen. I I am loyal in that I will show up, I will do the job. The thing I care about most is my clients. Like I enjoy getting to build relationships with my clients and help their businesses succeed. For me, that's really the end goal of my job. But I tell everybody, I'm like, you're not paying me for what I do during the day. You're paying me for my time. The stuff I do, the tasks of my job are just how I fill that time, but you're buying my time and
yeah,
my time is very valuable. So like that's how I view it. And if I feel like my time is being wasted, then that's when I know I should move on. Because I'm not going to get more time back.
yeah,
Like I've had companies offer positions, but it's like, oh, you need to be in office, even if it's 3 days a week. I'm like, well, I don't want that. I dropped my daughter off at school today. Like I couldn't do that if I was commuting to work. Like those are
yeah,
things that I'm not willing to give back. I used to, I mean, when I lived in Atlanta, I was driving an hour and a half each way to work. For years, that was just the norm. And I know that I can't go back to that. So like
yeah,
I've drawn a bunch of lines and things that are acceptable and things that aren't. And I just view everything as you're buying my time and are you wasting my time or not? Um,
yeah,
but beyond that, I will be as loyal as I need to be, and I will care because I do care, but I will also go where the opportunities make sense for me. Um, which I think most people, if they're honest, will absolutely do that.
yeah. I think that the thing that's important about going where the opportunity is, and I see that, is that I think that it's like companies need to be flexed on now at this point. It's
Yeah.
like I shouldn't have to go in just because you made a bad real estate decision. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like if your actual job and the types of jobs we're talking about that we have, the juncture
Hmm.
I am in my life with the amount of time I've invested in the social media and like marketing and,
Yeah.
website kind of front end type things that I'm still exploring, it's like I feel like I'm like, I have to go in this direction. In the direction that I built,
Hmm.
there's not many instances where I have to be in an office.
Yeah.
There's so many different projects that I don't have to be. And it's funny that after all of the time that, through the pandemic and past, that we know that it works, but people
Yeah.
are now reverting back to, no, we'll work better. And I've had those instances where like the boss told us to like come back, like, hey, let's go back to 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And then we were still one, I would potentially be the only one in the office on a Zoom meeting, or like, yeah, just things like that where it's sort of like, who are we doing this for? Like, who are
Hmm.
we going in for? But I think what's important is I think it's important for people to be able to stand up to employers, and because I hope that the end result is, and this is not going to happen, this is what my dream would be, is that companies need to start caring for their employees
Yeah.
more. And it's sort of like you could actually make me loyal if it felt like you cared, and not just with like pizza or saying that we're family or something.
Hmm.
But like I feel like it's like if we tell employers no more, or
Yeah.
don't actually do the thing you don't want to do within reason, then hopefully the end result is like we get pensions again, or some kind of thing, like it's like actually be like, oh no, I need these people more than they need me.
Yeah.
That's the power dynamic is like really weird and continues to be weird and will probably always be weird, honestly.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of pushback on workers' rights. And I think you and I are kind of on like the far edge of it, where we see that and we are more comfortable being vocal about it. Whereas people coming into the workforce now are much more vocal and much more aggressive about it because they
Yeah.
know the opportunities they're going to have are so diminished compared to the already diminished opportunities that we had.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's been so much labor movement talk and so many unions going on strike and so much progress there. I do think we'll continue to see that. But I think in the corporate world, we'll start to see more companies realize, hey, if we switch to a 4-day work week and not 4 10s, 4 8s, we're going to draw people because they want those 52 days a year back. Like
Yeah.
people will take a pay cut to get 52 days a year back because it just makes sense. Or more and more companies fully covering healthcare, not just for an employee, but for a full family. There's been times where to insure my family, I was paying almost $2,000 a month for health insurance.
Yeah.
That's insanity. Obviously, I will leave that job as soon as something comes along because, like, when I was in it, I was like, I'm losing $25,000 a year
Yeah.
for health insurance. So I think more people will raise their hand and will be vocal about that. It'll be a long fight. But then, as far as like us pushing back, and I say all of this knowing that I am currently employed, I'm also a tall white guy who speaks confidently. Like, I know that it's easier for me to walk into a room and be like, hey, I don't want to do this, or I don't think
Yeah.
this is right, than it is for other people. It's also my personality to do that. So, like, it's kind of expected that I will be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Because, like, obviously, that's,
Yeah.
that's just who I am. So, like, I see those things, but that doesn't make it less important that I do it because me
Mhm.
talking about those things that I'm uncomfortable with, or like, hey, I don't think it's right that we do things this way. Um, Being in marketing, a lot of what we do is manipulating data to make our work look good to show it to a client because you don't want to have a conversation like, hey, we fucked up this month. Like, all the
Yeah.
numbers are bad. So, like, how do we manipulate the data to make things look good? And I just, as a blanket statement, will tell people like, hey, I know it will make our company look good if we do this. I'm not going to do it because I am morally opposed to manipulating these numbers to then hand that to the client. Like, that is not
Yeah.
something I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about losing my job doing that, but other people might. So,
There, there was like something. It was, I don't know. Probably everything I'm gonna say was a TikTok in some way. But there was like a company. I mean, it was on the news a few years ago. But basically, they were like, we're not gonna pay any worker less than X amount of dollars.
yeah, it was like
Uh,
60,000 was the
yeah.
base. Yeah.
One thing I think about that is just that. I feel like if it's kind of the evil way of being like caring for workers that
Hmm.
I almost feel like you could probably get a lot out of people to make them work longer hours than they
Hmm.
should
Yeah,
if you treated them with respect. So it's
absolutely.
almost like at the end of it, you might actually be able to get me to like pull out my phone and check Slack at 8 p.m. because you pay me
Yeah.
so much more than other places. That's not the best reason to do it, but it's sort of like if companies could use
Hmm.
workers' rights to be able to, to almost a bad degree, but then it's sort of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, but I don't see that many companies doing that. I'm like, you probably could get a lot more work out of me if you like threw these
Yeah.
things at me, like I don't
Yeah.
know. I've thought about that some, and it's sort of like the end result is kind of weird, but I'm
No,
like,
I
it's better than
well,
nothing.
care buys loyalty. If you
Yeah.
know that you're being treated fairly and that you feel like you were cared for, you will be more loyal. Because like we've all had jobs where you're treated like shit. You know you're treated like shit. They know they're treating you like shit. And so it doesn't matter. You're gonna slack off. You're gonna do less work. Like you said, you're not gonna open Slack at 8 p.m. for a job where you know your boss doesn't even know your name.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason to. So it's kind of like the love bombing approach that like cults take, where
Yeah.
like they draw you in and they just shower you with love to like slowly get you to do what they want you to do. Um, there are marketing agencies that do that, like even use the terminology of love bombing, which is pretty weird. Um,
Yeah.
but I think as these conversations evolve and as more people are more vocal, companies will start to see that as a tool to recruit and retain employees if they treat them well, because it's expensive to find new employees. It
Yeah.
takes time. Typically, you've got people that have to cover if somebody quit. So it puts a strain on an entire team. So you want to retain those people. I think there will start to be a shift, not in corporate America, but like smaller companies will absolutely see the need for it.
Yeah.
It's just then what will they take away when they start to give something?
I'm also looking again at the written down topic
Hmm.
that and I'm wondering if we've done it. So I guess like okay, so maybe I'll do it myself. So I feel like once again at this juncture of my career, um y- see, this is why we never get to the actual topic because I think of something else, and it feels like it's more important. But there was something that you were talking about with Jordan, and just this idea of like, kind of like working your way up, and then you kind of
Hmm.
like one thing kind of leads to the next thing.
Yeah.
There are so many times in my journey where it kind of feels like I go down an angle, like when I worked in finance,
Hmm.
and then you kind of get to the end, well, in my case, failing the finance exams that I needed necessary to be in that climate. But it wasn't. I can't really add that well, But you
Yeah.
don't really have to do that when you're talking through finance. But it
Yeah.
would be helpful. It's probably why I didn't pass these tests. But it's kind of like a lot of times with starting over, it hasn't always felt like oh, well, let me sit here for a second because I still am going towards this goal.
Hmm.
Like there's so many things where it's like, oh, it almost would feel like it's like, oh, I guess I'm a wedding DJ now. That's what I do. Like,
Yeah.
I was a professional fisherman, and now I'm a wedding DJ. And well, now let's see what social media marketing is. Like, that's where it's
Yeah.
kind of felt like within my
Hmm.
thing, but in a way, I felt like with my last role, it felt like the first time all of those things started to kind of synergize, if I'm using the word
Yeah.
right, into kind of like, oh no, all of these things kind of taught me things about myself and about people so that I know people and I know how
Mm.
people react on like a website and where
Yeah.
what they want, because I am the consumer, I am the user, I am the guy who bought the comic books, I am the guy who bought, because
Yeah.
like with my last job being like a comic book price guide and working in like concert posters and stuff, it was like, no, I am the actual customer,
Yeah.
and then so it was like looking at things from the lens of the customer, because I feel like there's people a lot of times when you're building a product or like a marketing product of any sort
Hmm.
of thing, you have to constantly reset and remind yourself like who is the end user.
Yeah.
And customers will like, or your boss will say that a bunch of times, but a lot of times they think the end user is them,
Yeah.
but they're not. They've built a thing and they're not at that place anymore.
Hmm.
And all that to say, it's like for once, I'm trying to use those skills that I learned to go to the next step
Hmm.
instead of being like, oh, well, I guess I'm a professional breakdancer now or something. Like try and actually like plug that in and stay the course
Yeah.
in the first time in my life, way too late into my 30s. Yeah. So,
Well,
yeah.
first off, I don't think there's a way too late. Like transitioning into one thing or picking a new course, I don't feel like there's really time frames on that. If you have the skill set and the drive to do it, it's more about the drive, especially in like marketing and social media, because it's a pain in the ass to work in and
Hmm.
it's constantly changing. Um, I mean, 5 years ago, a business didn't have to worry about what their TikTok presence was going to look like
Yeah.
because it wasn't a thing. And now it's like, oh, this is the most popular social media on the planet. How do we leverage this for brand awareness and to sell products?
Yeah.
Like the problem solving side of it will always change, but it has to be like this drive to do I care about it enough to learn these new things as they roll out? You know, being primarily in like paid search and SEO for most of my career, it's like, oh, Google's taking away cookies. What does digital marketing look like if everything has an opt out and I can't retarget anyone?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean for digital marketing?
Do you feel like you solved what that means for you?
No, no.
Because I wouldn't know the answer to that either. I mean, like I would work on teams with people that were
mhm,
way more adept at SEO than I
yeah,
was. Like I always feel like I'm like, oh, I actually kind of felt like during my 3 years at my last job,
mhm,
what became apparent is that it's like I was the customer. I was like the
yeah,
internal customer that was
yeah,
always like, no, I know what these people want. And
mhm,
that wasn't always clear. And it's funny because it's kind of like once again something you were talking about on the episode with Jordan, where it's kind of like all of these things that you kind of learn while on tour or like playing in
mhm,
bands or like just like working in these kind of, I guess, being part of a subculture.
yeah,
Personally, I take them highly for granted because they're just things that me and all my friends can do. Like,
yeah,
like it's like I know 30 different people that could make you a flyer,
yeah,
but it's sort of like then actionably that's something I could put on my resume, like
mhm,
design.
yeah,
But then I'm like, I'm not a designer,
mhm,
like that. Like it's like I know this guy over here that's a much better designer than
yeah,
me. But to most people that haven't lived in a subculture and had to kind of create things on a day-to-day basis just because
mhm,
they wanted to be part of quote unquote the scene,
yeah,
so it's I'm not even sure how I got to that point, but it's like all of these things I started being aware that it's like, oh no, this thing that I learned is helpful.
yeah,
Like it's like, oh, I can get this guy on the phone. And they're
mhm,
like, how can you do that? And like, I know how to,
yeah,
and it's like people don't necessarily know. Um, but those are all skills that I learned
mhm,
from like being in bands, booking shows, booking tours all across
yeah,
the country and Canada and Japan. And those aren't things that you can be taught in school,
mhm,
you
yeah,
know. And so it's a lived experience but that's a hard thing to put on a resume, especially when I'm like starting over,
yeah,
that's kind of like where I am in my journey. It's kind of been, how do you show all of that with without looking like the craziest person's resume, you know.
So
Uh
here's how I do that kind of stuff. So because I am a person who has changed jobs a lot, I will take older positions and I will just meld things together. So I
mhm.
will extend a time frame because it doesn't really matter. If we're talking about a job I was at 8 years ago, it's almost irrelevant. And even if they're like, hey, we want to talk to someone at this company, it's 8 years ago. No one even works there anymore that worked
Yeah.
there when I was. So whatever. And then I will take skill sets and just start to combine stuff. So like planning tours, that's event planning.
Yeah.
You've done event planning. If you want to get into, hey, this is logistics, figuring out how we get from one position to another. You do audio and video editing. So like editing a music video, like we were talking about before the record even started. Like those are all skill sets that go a really long way, especially in marketing, because somebody's always looking for someone like, hey, can we cut this video for social? Like
Yeah.
we need to get this punched up. Like, so just finding the keywords for those of how does this relate to the type of job I'm looking for and finding a couple of those keywords and then baking them into whatever position you want to plug those into. Because like we said, it's an AI that's scanning every resume anyway. And
Yeah.
they're going to say, hey, we need to look for these 10 words. Uh, so that's the way I've always done it is I just kind of distill everything down into bullet points of like, I did this, 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 and this, and I make sure they're keyword rich. I'm essentially doing SEO on my resume.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was like the things that also kind of hover over, and it's like still this idea of like, well, I guess back to the working somewhere for 30 years. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
benefit of working somewhere for 30 years, highly hypothetically, is that you kind of get like vested into a 401k or
Yeah.
something, and you're like, oh, well, I'll be able to X at the end of this, however
Yep.
much money dollars I can hypothetically retire, you
Yeah.
know, and it's yeah, that's like another side of it where it's like my eyes like barely on it. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a guy the other day about like, because he's been with the same company for feels like 20 years. They've like changed names, but essentially it's Muzak, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just been there forever.
Yeah.
And he was like, I haven't even really like really saved for my retirement. And he's like older than me. And he's been at this job for a long time because he's like, I don't envision that I will be around long enough for it to matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, that's dark.
That is
You
very
know,
dark. Yeah.
it's very dark. But it's sort of like, it feels so daunting. It feels so daunting with those things. Is kind of like, I think like a piece, and there's a point I'm trying to make, and it doesn't really have to do about 401ks. It's just like even with like a 401k, it's good to remind yourself like it's just kind of one piece at a time.
Yeah.
Like it's sometimes it's like even where I'm at with like not having a job currently for the
Mm-hmm.
past 2 months, it's kind of like if you look at the whole house and you're like, I have to build this house.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's a big task. I have no
Yeah.
clue how to do that. And it's gonna sound corny, so brace yourself. It starts with one brick,
Yeah.
you know? And that's
No,
like it's
absolutely.
yeah, and that's kind of where it's like, and then it all starts to fall in place,
Mm-hmm.
because it's important to think like it's like well, you at least have to go in that direction and like the direction that I'm choosing to go with like this kind of starting over thing is I feel that I need things on my resume
Mm-hmm.
that aren't just, hey, I'm a guy that has lived a rich life and I can tell you all these things. I need these actionable things
Yeah.
that people can point to know that I actually do have the experience because, like we've kind of talked through, and I know we've talked about in other times, I feel like if I'm thrust into a situation, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily help your employability in certain
Mm-hmm.
cases. So as of like next week, depending on when this pod comes out,
Yeah.
as of next week, I'm starting a course on UI UX design, like something that
Mm-hmm.
I've done a decent amount of, but I'm
Yeah.
like at the end of it, I will have an actual certificate. I will
Yeah.
be able to put that on my resume, so that will serve me a little bit closer to getting those roles
Yeah.
so that I can stay in that, you know, that element, that type of job.
Hmm.
Because that's where I am. It's can then after that, it's like maybe I need to take an SEO course or something. You're
Yeah.
like, that's kind of where I am in my career. It's like kind of I've been playing Zelda a lot. So this is the example. It's like you get to a point in your journey where you realize you're like, oh, I have to go back to like Lookout Tower because
Hmm.
I forgot to get the shield or
Yeah.
something. And it's like I need to get this so that I can go back
Yeah.
and I guess well beat Ganondorf. I guess that's the end result of that story. But that's where I am in my journey is I have to pick up these skills that you heard my southern accent come out very strongly. Um, that allow me to hopefully be more employable. Is where I am in this process of life.
Yeah. Is UX, UI design is leaning into that based on it being what you were doing most recently, or is it, hey, I think that this is something I actually want to pursue? Like the idea of
Yeah.
starting over and getting, a certificate so you can say, hey, I have proof of concept. I can do this. I am functionally capable of doing said job. Is that
Yeah.
means to an end of like, hey, I will be employable, or means to an end of this is where I think I want to go the next 10, 15 years?
It's kind of both. I mean, near the end of my role, there were a lot of instances where the tech started getting there.
Hmm.
And it was a lot of the building of the site was kind of like make the clock work.
Yeah.
And it was because I would have conversations with my boss and it's like, what do we do about the face of the clock?
Yeah.
And then he would say, well, there's no reason to fix the face of the clock if the back of the clock doesn't work at all.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, I would agree or disagree, but I see the point. What's the point of
Yeah.
people using your site if it doesn't work the way you say it does?
Yeah.
But I also think that people don't feel like a site can work if it doesn't look like it can work. So
Yeah.
there's a thing of that. So I started getting really interested in that. Like it's like just looking at it as a customer and being like, would I even use this site with the way it looks? Because
Hmm.
there's a thing even about people's logos. Like when I'm applying for jobs, and a logo speaks to me, I feel like I want to work there, which is not a very smart way to be, but
No, it makes
it
sense. I'm
does
the same.
work. It does work because you're
Yeah.
like that feels like a place where they care about their image,
Yeah.
and so they care about. In my mind, I extend that to then they must care about their employees. They probably don't, but that's where I go. They care
Yeah.
about how they're perceived by the outside world, and then so that's why I got really thinking about UI UX. And then there were things where I was like, what if the button was over here?
Hmm.
And then the tech people would just change it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shit, I can do that.
I
And
can,
then,
I can
and then
affect real change.
yeah, and then people were like, yeah, that's just UI UX design.
Hmm.
Then I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then so I looked into it more and I just kind of started putting more of those kind of Jira tickets and things in, like, hey, what
Yeah.
if the button's over here? What if this takes you here? Or, what if it looks like it works? So by the time you get it to work, people, it's like, why is this space just negative space?
Hmm.
And those kind of things to the end user started really being interesting to me because they felt creative.
Yeah.
They feel like a thing that it's like if I click here and then I get to here and less than 2 clicks or something,
Hmm.
that feels like it's like you're allowing the end result or the sell.
Yeah.
It's like if I have to click 3 times, I'm not buying your product.
Yeah.
But if I can click once and get to the thing quicker, that's what a lot of times UI UX design is.
Yeah.
So I think I'm already forgetting what your question was, but I started being really interested in that more than I was interested in any of the other aspects of like fake email jobs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I know that I built my experience in the space for anywhere from 3 to 15 years, depending on who you ask or what the skill is. And
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, I built my life into this direction. And because of like running a record label and, even like podcasting and social media and stuff that have gone with it,
Yeah.
It's like if I stay the course, this is actually an aspect of it that seems interesting that isn't completely like, oh, I need to go learn how to code.
Yeah.
And, that might be a next step later on,
Mhm.
but it at least feels like it's like a building block towards that direction of kind of having those actionable things on like a resume
Yeah.
that, you know, don't make you the first person laid off. Yeah.
Um, no, I like I think you and I think about things very similarly. Where for me, user journey is something I think about a lot if I'm looking at a site. Because like if I get to a site and I'm like, well, I can't even find the button to get to where I want to go, I'm bouncing. Doesn't matter what the
Hmm.
product is. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how interested I am. If I think it's going to be a pain in the ass to find what I'm looking for, because I'll go find it somewhere else. So like
Yeah.
the user journey side of it is interesting to me. I like that problem solving side of it. And this actually directly correlates back to what I was talking about with Jordan of like for him figuring out logistics for a company scratches that same itch as writing a song because he has a problem. He knows how it starts and he knows where it needs to end. He just has to figure out everything in between.
Yeah.
Is UX UI similar for you of like, hey, this is where it's at now. This is where I need it to go and now I need to connect all the dots. I need a
Yeah.
verse, chorus, bridge and an outro. Like
Yeah. 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 I mean, even sometimes with that journey, like, here's the thing, and I know it probably doesn't serve me well in like interviews,
Mhm.
maybe our interview or really job interviews. What I mean is like I don't like the terminology that people will throw around in marketing that don't actually like, well, I know it means something to the internal person,
Mhm.
but it's kind of like trying to cut through it and be like, what do we actually mean?
Yeah.
Imagine I'm a consumer and I'm hearing someone say, like for example, on the site that I used to work for, this company called Go Collect, it doesn't matter, and we're an hour into the conversation. Uh, they use this thing with like list. So
Mhm.
it's like on Letterboxd, you can make a list of the movies you're watching or like
Yeah.
my favorite Bond movies, which I actually do have a list of. But then
I'll note that for later. We'll talk about
they had
it.
they had a thing that said nested. And I
Mhm.
understand what nested means,
Mhm.
but I'm like, does a general consumer know what nested means? It's a
No.
list within a list.
Yeah.
Then it's like there's gotta be a way that you say that without using that word because that
Mhm.
word isn't sexy. That word
Yeah.
isn't cool and that word's too complicated.
Yeah.
And it's like it's something that like a tech guy wrote and he thinks makes sense,
Mhm.
but you didn't take a step out because
Yeah.
there's so many times where like people will relaunch their site and they've used it internally and they but they don't think about who their end user is.
Yeah.
And then so we start using all of these words, like it's like there's certain UI UX words that I could have used. It's like wireframes and things like that.
Yeah.
I worked on it on Figma, which these aren't like difficult words, but I just think sometimes we throw these things around and they don't mean anything to the end user.
Mhm.
They're like genre tags. Like it's like
Yeah.
if something being like indie pop means something to you and helps you put it in a little pot a little easier, that's
Yeah.
cool. But to the end user, what does it mean? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if they're not going to be able to use your product or listen to your song easily in a way that works for them.
Mhm.
And that's subjective, but that's kind of like how I like to think of things instead of like getting it's even like when people start just throwing around it's like ROI, like KPI, and it's like what does that mean for the end user? And I think maybe there's so many times in meetings there are nice things to throw around so that someone's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I did pay the right guy." And
Yeah.
that's great. But it's like when you break it down, it's like what are you doing for me?
Mhm.
So it's like stepping into that kind of headspace and being like, if this is the intention of your site or your product, is it going to get me to where I need to go as quick as possible?
Yeah.
Because I don't give a shit like how long you took to like code it using PHP.
Yeah.
I need to use this for this specific purpose.
Yeah.
And that was like a constant battle, but I liked the battle. I was
Mhm.
like, stream it down,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where I am in my journey.
Yeah, that be the advocate for the user, because for you, if you are UI UX focused, that is the goal, is giving
Yeah.
them the best possible experience.
Yeah, to a
And
degree. I mean, I
yeah.
think probably an actual UI UX person that's has tenure, that's potentially not a lot of what they do.
Hmm.
Because there's a different subset of it called like people would call it CX.
Hmm.
It's like customer experience.
Yeah.
And so it's stepping outside of the actual like design, like this button leads to this thing, to this
Hmm.
thing, and all that stuff. And this is where I show my work, show my journey.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, you did all of that, but is this just snazzy, or does it
Yeah.
actually help the person? Can it be a product of two?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to eyeball it more from that, but I also do feel like I need to build up those skills
Hmm.
to a point of even songwriting again. It's like I went so long and I've done the exact same thing in my career where it's I'll figure it out along the way. Like I'll
Yeah.
build the airplane as it's about to crash.
Yeah.
And I have been able to do that. But at some point, over like the last year and a half, and not any longer because I'm unemployed, but I was taking guitar lessons.
Hmm.
And then there were certain things where I was like, if I had known, because I thought that guitar lessons would sort of take the mystery out of songwriting, and
Yeah.
kind of like I liked being like an idiot about it. I liked being able to sort of like stumble myself into a good hook. But one
Yeah.
of the things like working on slightly on music theory and just learning how to play chords properly and things
Hmm.
like that, where it was like, oh, certain songs are written in this structure. Like this, if you use this structure and you know where like a 1 4 5 is,
Yeah.
then you know how to craft the thing that you've struggled for a few hours to craft, and it's like a cheat code. So it's like I can figure out how to do the thing,
Hmm.
but I also need to accept that potentially if I take this course and I get to the end and I have the certificate,
Yeah.
then I've pushed myself along quicker into my journey. And so not to be so like res- I guess back to that original point of like of being on Twitter and being like, maybe I don't want to post the same meme. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, there could be something one could learn from joining the herd a little bit,
Yeah.
in a way that it's sort of like, well, no, this is if you look at this and this is how they got from point A to point B.
Hmm.
I know I want to get from point A to point B, so why do I make this difficult and then try and
Yeah.
like build my own bridge when the bridge has already been built?
But also, knowing how something works and how it's built allows you to deconstruct it and rebuild it in a new way that still fits the
Yeah.
same mold. Like, I know you and I are both movie nerds. So, Scream is a perfect example of they took a genre that was dead. Like, there was the slasher boom in the 80s, obviously tapered off due to oversaturation. It was just garbage in the early 90s. Scream comes out and it follows all the same rules, but then it talks about the rules while it's doing it. It pokes fun at the rules and then it inverses some of the rules. And so in doing that, they took everything that is a set template and they made it fresh while still playing by the same exact rules, but just acknowledging the rules that were in place.
Yeah.
So I think by having an understanding of what you're doing inside and out, and I'm very much the same way as you. I'll be like, well, I'll figure it out while I'm doing it. Like that is how I've built my career. It's just been, I will say I can do this job. I will get in, and I'm confident enough in my skill set to be like, yeah, I can figure out how to make this happen.
Yeah.
But now I want to step back and look at those things and be like, okay, I know how it works. Now, how do I change it to make it something new or make it something fresh or have a different approach in a way that people aren't thinking about it because they also know the rules and they're just following the rules. So I
Yeah.
want I want to use those rules, but I want to kind of break them while I use them.
Yeah, like I mean it's kind of the same thing, but yeah, when you understand how the thing was made, like sometimes when I'm having to make a flyer, like recently it's like I asked a friend like, "Hey, can you send me your file?" And it's like I want to look at how you made these layers work.
Hmm.
And then my end result, I just went a completely different way, but you could see the skeleton behind it and you
Yeah.
know where to go. And so it's like it's not always the back to songwriting, it's like it wasn't always actually a mystery. There was a skeleton behind it that I
Hmm.
just needed to inspect a little bit more. And
Yeah.
so it's like it's like I mean it is like like Scream in the way that it's kind of like being an artist. Like you know if you kind of like take classes and you learn all the concepts and all the things that you're supposed to do, then you can go, well, I'm this is my voice.
Hmm.
But you know where the lines lie
Yeah.
if you've taken those kind of things. It's not to say you can't end up still being a good artist if you didn't go that way.
Yeah.
But if you know it, then you know exactly where to color outside the lines. It's once again, this is very corny moment. It's like jazz. It's like everyone thinks everyone in
I gotta go.
jazz.
Podcast over. Podcast.
Yeah, it's like one thing I learned in those music classes is like jazz often goes through the same format, and I'm not remembering what the 1 4 5 is 6 or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but they often, I'll say often always, follow a certain bone structure. And so they know
Hmm.
where they're not,
Yeah.
you know, and then so they know where to build from. And then so people are like, how are you doing that?
Hmm.
But they know where the one is,
Yeah.
and it's like, I need to learn to know where the one is.
Yeah.
I know how to do it, but I need to kind of learn where the bones are.
Yeah. That's kind of how I like
It's
when
jazz.
it's jazz, but also like David Lynch. When I watch a David Lynch movie, I feel that also of like, yeah, he knows where he's going. He knows where the one is. It makes no sense most of the time, but I know in the end it will resolve in a way that makes sense and makes me feel something,
Yeah.
even if the journey is confusing.
Like it's like he's like, have you seen Straight Story?
Yeah.
That if anyone is not convinced that David Lynch knows how to make a movie,
Hmm.
watch Straight Story.
Yeah.
Like the guy knows how to make a movie. I wasn't confused by it, but if you need a reminder, watch Straight Story. The guy knows how to make a movie that your
Hmm.
parents would love.
Yeah.
And it's like it feels slightly like a Christian film, but in like the best. I mean, it's an amazing movie. Like
Yeah.
like it's one of my favorites by him. But it also just feels like I understand why it's not the movie in his catalog that people are talking about because it's not doing the David Lynch things, but
Yeah.
I feel like it shows you this guy knows exactly what he could do,
Hmm.
and also it's like he knows where the lines are. He
Yeah.
just chooses not to do it, and you get, whatever kind of, you get like wild at heart or whatever.
Yeah.
You Um, but yeah, I don't know. So that's where I am in my journey, and
It is scary. It's like feeling like you're starting over. The first agency I was at, it was a startup. I think I was the 12th or 13th person at the company. I was there for a year, almost a year and a half. And then our biggest client got bought out and they took all their marketing in house. And so, like, when that happened, we all just kind of knew it was like, oh, layoffs are coming. We'll try to make it work. Um, and then when like my time came, I was the second round of layoffs. And that was a job where like genuinely felt like, oh, I would stay at this company forever. Like I was so happy. I had made people I'm still friends with 12 years later. I had gotten a friend hired. So like it was just turning into this like very communal feeling every time I was at work. Like the
yeah,
work was hard and it was stressful. It was a startup. It was a struggle every day, but it felt great to be doing it. And then it was like, oh, it's just cut out from under me. And now I'm like back to zero. And then the next move, I went from being an account manager to doing data analytics, like pulling lists together for car dealership mailers. And it was like, what just happened? Like I was on the path I thought was going to be what I was doing. And now like, what the fuck is this job? I don't even know how to explain what I'm doing every day
yeah,
now.
yeah,
And it felt like, oh, is this just what I do? Like this company's established. I did the startup thing. Do I now just take the safe route and like stay here? Uh, and I did for 2 years. And then I was like, I can't do this. This doesn't feel right. So like, all right, I'm gonna start over again. I'm gonna go back into account management. And then I think after that second job jump, I was like, oh, it's not as scary as I thought. Like anytime I feel like I should start over, I should just start over.
Yeah.
Because it's been a good experience almost every time. There was one job I took that I was awful at. A couple months in, I was like, guys, clearly this isn't for either of us.
Yeah.
And so I went and I did something else. But it's a weird place to be in. The uncertainty's not fun, but I feel like I've learned a lot about what I am and am not good at by just leaning into those things. And then also acknowledging, like, hey, if I thought I would be good at this, but I'm not, that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be for me. I'm
Yeah.
not saying like you'll get into a UX role and be like, I can't do this shit. Um,
I mean, it might come to the end of it, and then I'm like, I don't like this as much as I
mhm.
thought because
Yeah.
I know people that work in it, and the downside to a lot of it is you work at building a thing, you make a presentation,
Hmm.
and then people go, "Cool, we're never gonna do that,
Yeah.
but thank you for it." And then so that I mean that can be like, "Oh shit, now I'm gonna go work somewhere else because what's the point if I keep making these little PowerPoint things or show
Yeah.
show your work in Figma?" And then someone goes, "Yeah, I don't think our client has the budget for that," or like
Yeah.
blah blah blah, whatever it is. So there's definite downsides, and but it's like it also feels like being that we're all kind of doomed or destined, depending on how we're looking at it, to work in these kind of email spaces, these fake email jobs,
Yeah.
that I at least need to like build up being to build up my skills,
Yeah.
so it's like even if the end result I don't land there, I feel that by knowing, and I've
Hmm.
seen it because I've seen it in practice, by knowing it will serve me well depending on where I want to go within this digital space.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of but I need to follow through with it first to kind of
Yeah.
make that assessment before I go, okay, well, I'm a wedding DJ now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just because it's a step doesn't mean it has to be the destination.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a good place to wrap it up. But
let's do it.
that's about as positive of a note as I think we could land on.
I
All
think
right.
so.
I know you have a ton of other shit, so plug all your stuff. Where can people find you, follow you, buy your new album, all of that?
Yeah, yeah. There was a part an hour into the conversation. I was like, I'm not promoting my new album.
It's fine.
Um,
I'll also do it in the intro, so we'll get it at the top and the bottom, and then I'll also include links. But yeah,
yeah.
promote your
So
stuff.
okay, so I'm in a band called Late Bloomer. I'm also in another band called All Right, but the one that's putting out an album on March 1st. It's called Another One Again. It's our fourth album, and yeah, you can buy it at latebloomer.bandcamp.com. That would be the easiest place to do it. It's also being released by Self-Aware Records and Dead Broke Records out of New York. Each label has their own color vinyl. So if you're into the physical side of it, hopefully you are, because I would like to sell records so that I can keep putting out records. So even if you're not going to open it and you just want a souvenir, give me 20 or so dollars. And I believe the record is good. But it's like Spotify doesn't really help anything. The
Yeah.
metrics sort of like help me and my ego, which my ego could be better. um
So
but
more streams is what you're
yeah,
saying.
some
More
more streams
streams.
would be nice. Buying it would be nice. Listening to it would be nice. Just listen to Late Bloomer, Another One Again. We have three singles out. The first one, Self Control, Mother Mary, and Hope for Rain. We've made it really easy for you if you go on streaming. They're all sandwiched into one little playlist thing.
You
So each
nested
time
them.
I did nest them, yeah. So they're all on their own little thing. So as we continue and go towards, you're getting all of these singles and you're starting to see the full picture, one brick at a time. Um, and I would love it for you to listen to it. You could also listen to my podcast, Spinning Out, where I talk to musicians. It's actually not super far from what we're doing here, yet we don't talk about jobs. We talk about albums, but in the way that we do. So if you like Zach's podcast, which if you've listened this far, I assume you have, because if not,
Yeah.
you've hatefully been
What the
listening.
hell?
Yeah. Then check that out. Also hear me on George Center, which I think Zach is actually a part of now. And it's our in quotes comedy podcast. And yeah, I can't really explain it any other way
Yeah.
than that. I think that's basically everything I have to promote.
Cool. I'll also I'll add your LinkedIn just for fun, so people can add you on LinkedIn. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I didn't give my handles on anything, but find me. Just find me somewhere. I'm not going to tell you my handles. And I'm not trying to be coy. I
Yeah.
just don't I have too many handles to kind of give. But if you want to see me on Twitter, other J Robbins, but I know we have to get back to the things that we're doing. So let's wrap it up.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.